on today's Story Beat.
I played the same role for a lot of years. And so that's why I like to do different things. I will take roles in like independent films and, or smaller things, because I think it's really good to, to play someone else, because I know how Esther would think, but I don't know how maybe this other character would think. Steve, I don't take it for granted. I mean, I could go upstairs one day and never come down. Is how I feel. So I just keep it fresh and keep going to class and go to my voice lessons and my dance lessons and, acting class.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on Story Beat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, we have a really special show today. My guest, Kate Linder, was cast as Esther Valentine on The Young and the Restless 40 years ago, where she remains a key member of the top-rated daytime drama's cast. Kate's feature film credits include Hysteria, Erased, Miss Meadows, Garry Marshall's Mother's Day, Charlie Matthau's The Book of Leah, and various others. Kate enjoys the best of two worlds, on the air and in the air, because she never quit her pre-Young and the Restless weekend job as a United Airlines flight attendant, which she says keeps her grounded. Born in Pasadena, California, Kate entered dance classes at 3. By the time she finished high school, she'd appeared in major singing and dancing roles in Promises, Promises, Threepenny Opera, Little Abner, Jesus Christ Superstar, and many more. Following graduation from San Francisco State University with a degree in theater arts, Kate worked part-time at the university, which is where she met her husband, Professor Dr. Ronald Linder, who subsequently joined the public health and medicine faculty at UCLA. After settling in Los Angeles, Kate broke into TV with sitcom and drama guest starring roles, including starring in Cotillion 65 as a dance teacher with a dual life that won multiple film festival awards. Kate became the celebrity spokesperson for the ALS Association following her brother-in-law's diagnosis. She spends most holidays serving food at the LA Mission, and she was on many USO tours with the late Johnny Grant, spending Thanksgivings visiting troops in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Korea, Guantanamo Bay, and Fort Hood. Kate and Robin Wiss debuted Kate's charity Opportunity in 1998 in Vancouver, featuring her Young and Restless castmates. Kate's teas also benefit the March of Dimes Canada's conductive education program in Toronto and Calgary. Kate was elected to 2 terms as the Television Academy's Governor of Daytime Programming Peer Group and was elected to multiple terms as a SAG-AFTRA board member. In April 2008, Kate received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm deeply honored to have the one and only Kate Linder as my guest on StoryBeat today. Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Oh my goodness. It's an honor to be here with you.
The honor is all mine, believe me. All right, so let's go back in time a little bit. You've been at this game since you were a little girl, like a really little girl. So what attracted you to performing in the first place when you were just a tot?
It's interesting because that's all I ever wanted to do. I mean, I didn't want to be anything else that little girls want to be, like, a teacher, a flight attendant, a mother, I mean, a nurse. I didn't want to be any of those things. And I always told my parents I wanted to be an actress, and they went, oh no. They were hoping I would grow out of it. I mean, they were so supportive, and they gave me all the lessons and piano lessons and dance lessons and everything. But they didn't have a clue back then. I mean, it was so different, and they didn't have a clue. There wasn't anyone in my family that was in the business. So.
Well, even if you were in the business, you still wouldn't really have a clue at that age, at the age of 3.
Well, no, but I mean, they didn't have a clue how to help. I mean,
right.
They didn't know how to help me either. So
no connections. They didn't know anybody in the business.
Right. So they figured if I wanted it badly enough, I would figure out myself.
And so when you got that taste as a little girl, was that it? It was in your blood and that was the end of it?
Yeah, because I had the dance lessons and I did recitals and shows and that kind of thing. And that was it. I mean, I did, actually started doing plays in junior high school. It was interesting because I had, this is really funny. I had this teacher in junior high that he would assign all these book report, like history type things we would have to do. We have to do all these reports. And there was a lot of them. And I thought, well, this is boring to just stand up there and recite this, you know? And so, come up with these skits and these little plays we put together and to put those on. And
this was when you were a teenager. This was high school.
Junior high school, yes. Junior high. Actually, the first play I did was Antic Spring. And I played the character Blossom, and after that was it.
Sure. Once it was that way for me too when I was a kid. Once it got in my bloodstream, that was it. That was all I ever wanted to do. I'm wondering, from back in those days, were there any lessons that you learned all the way back then that you still follow today?
Well, I think it came mainly from my parents, and they always said, if you want something, bad enough, you just keep going, you work really hard and you don't give up. I think that was a lesson even back then, because of course I would try out for things and not get them at times. And that was upsetting to me. And, you just have to say, okay, well, didn't get that one and maybe the next one.
So what did you know now that you wish you knew back then to like calm you down from those anxieties?
I wish, it's interesting. I wish I knew back then that I would see my glass as half full rather than half empty, and say that there will be something else will come along. Because back then you think, well, oh no, that's it. That's not, that's over for me. It's never going to happen. And
I think lots of people think that, and it's always something around the corner, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just when you least expect it too. It's when you're not pushing so hard, I think, is when it comes to you.
I find that very interesting. I've seen and read, I've talked to a number of people, and I've read any number of stories in which just when people go into audition and don't care, that's when they get the part.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
It is interesting. Who did you most admire when you were growing up? Who did you look at and say, wow, look at that career. I'd like to have something like what they have.
Well, Shirley MacLaine, I loved her. Then, I mean, I don't know if it was back then, but Meryl Streep, I've always loved her.
Sure.
And she's totally amazing. I think just going, my parents took me to plays and, went to theater stuff when I was little and going to films. And I think it was any actor on screen, whatever up there. I want to do that. I want to be that.
So you've worked a huge amount of your career in front of a camera, but you've also done, going back then, you've done quite a bit of stage work as well. You're not doing as much stage work these days, I assume, correct?
Well, I do. I mean, I love doing plays as well. And I did one, well, it was way before the pandemic, a few years ago. And so I will still, when one comes along, I definitely would take it if it was a, good role.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to really do a really small role in a play, but I still love doing theater because right then where the audience loves you or doesn't, exactly where, in TV and film, you don't really know. I mean, the only way I know is that, thank goodness I'm still there. So I must be doing something right.
Exactly. Well, it's the same with a show like what we're doing today. I mean, I have no idea what people are thinking when they're listening to this show. They're listening to it on a phone or on a computer, and I have no idea what they think. So
right.
It's really hard to make those judgments. Do you miss the stage when you're not on the stage? Do you prefer the theater to camera work, or are they equivalent to you?
Well, they're very different. And so, like film, it's interesting. Well, TV, first of all, TV, my show in particular, Young and the Restless, is very, very fast. You get one take and you better be on your game. You better know your lines. You better, With film, like we do 60 to 80 pages a day. And in film, they'll maybe do 2 or 3 pages a day.
Right.
And,
Big difference.
And it's a huge difference. And then, of course, a play, you've got all those lines, and I'm carrying around that script with me all the time because I'm so used to having, it's like studying or cramming for a test. You have to learn all this material, and then I dump it so it'll, to make room for the next day's material. And so doing a play, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid I'm gonna not remember my lines.
Do you have any particular techniques for how you memorize? Is it literally brute force? Do you just jam it all in, or is there a technique you use?
I just keep repeating it, going over and over. With a play, what I've started doing when you have a whole lot of dialogue is I will record the other person's lines, on my phone or something, and leave room for me to say, my part. And then I'll listen to that in the car, spend a lot of time in the car in LA. So I will then go over it in the car, like learning a song. It's the same kind of thing. I don't want to forget the lyrics. Of course, some of it will go with the music. So I've had to, perform a song and go, oh my gosh, I don't want to forget the words.
But at this point, you have memorized probably hundreds of thousands of lines of dialogue. And so the question is, how do you are able to sort of purge it out and forget about it?
Well, it's interesting because, this doesn't usually happen, but let's say they wanted to do a scene over again at the end of the day.
Right.
I would have to go back and look at the script again, because I've already gone on to the next scene, and then it's sort of erased. Thankfully, that doesn't usually happen.
It would be, I would think, a huge burden. I mean, I've heard of Mary Lou Henner having this perfect memory and she remembers everything. So she would remember everything. Well, to me, that would be burdensome, I would think.
Well, that's interesting. I did her show, Mary Lou Henner show. I danced on her show years ago. She's great. Wow. Well, I wish I had the perfect memory. That would be great. I don't know.
But you have it. I find that interesting. And I think the listeners will find that interesting too, that you sort of have a rolling, I memorize it, I have it in my head, and as soon as I'm done with it, out it goes, and I don't know what it was.
Yeah, pretty much. that happens.
I think that's got to be very useful in your particular career.
Yeah, hopefully, except it's like your short-term memory. It's like, where is it? You remember things from long ago.
Do you ever watch episodes that were already produced and then go, I don't remember saying those words?
I do. That's very interesting, Steve, because actually the 50th anniversary of our show is coming up, and so there's been stuff out there from way back when, and people have been posting stuff from way, and I'll look at these scenes, and first of all, I've been on there over 40 years and counting. So I'm looking at these scenes from 40 years ago, which is scary in itself. But then I go, wow, I didn't remember that. I don't remember saying those words. Yeah.
I've also had, as I mentioned to you earlier, I've had Melody Thomas Scott on the show as well. And she's also been on the show 40 plus years. And I'm just curious, what is your secret for endurance? That's a long haul to keep doing the same thing over and over again. What do you do? Is it exercise? Is it some sort of mental attitude that you take? How do you keep at it?
Well, it's really much like real life. You don't know. When you wake up in the morning, you think you know what's going to transpire that day, but you really don't know. I mean, I knew this morning I was going to be speaking with you, and I have other things that I know or think I'm going to be doing during the day, but you really, really don't know what's going to happen. And it's much like that with this, because I don't know what I'm going to be doing till I get that script and look at and see what my character's going to do. And that's like, I go, wow. In fact, for instance, they just made my character, now she is the receptionist, Chancellor Winters, which is great. And I was so excited when I read that. I didn't know that. And I'm reading the script going, what? This is great. So for me, since I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing, I like real life, it's new and fresh for me. And plus I love the show, and I'm honored to be part of it. It's the #1 show, and I'm thrilled to be there. So
I can't imagine that it would be any fun at all if you didn't like going to work.
yeah, that would not be good. That would not be good. Well,
No.
for everyone, I feel that I'm really lucky because I don't have to press the snooze alarm. You know, I go, yay, I get to go to work today. I get to play. I get to be Esther today. How fun.
So
you know?
the writers will, like you just said, will give you something new to do. But in all these years, are you seeking new things in Esther?
Well, actually, going back to the very beginning, you know, in the beginning, I didn't have very many lines. And so I thought, I have to do something here, to do something with this character, or I'm going to be gone. Because how many times can you say, Mr. So-and-so's here to see you? Or, you know, would you like some tea? Or, you know, how many times can you say that? And I thought, well, I've got to do something. So I thought if I do something and they don't like it, I'm going to be gone. But if I don't do anything, I'm going to be gone. So I've got to try. So I started making her man crazy. So every time whoever was at the door, whether it was the plumber or Victor Newman, was played by Eric Braden,
Sure.
whoever it was, Esther, you know, I would just go gaga, you know, like, and not say anything because it wasn't in the script, but started doing that. And then started doing little, like one day I asked props for a wooden spoon with like melted chocolate on it, and they went, what? Okay. You know, so they got it for me. And when in the script it said Esther goes to the door, you know, answers the door. And so, but I went to the door, but I had this wooden spoon, I had chocolate all over. I was trying not to get it on me, trying not to get it on the door, that kind of thing. And then one other day, it said in the script, Esther goes and gets the mail. So I went out, got the mail, opened it up, held up an envelope, look around, see if anyone's watching, hold it up to the light to see if I could see it, don't say anything, and stick it in my pocket and walk back in the house.
And that wasn't in the script.
And they didn't say anything. And so I would do things like that. And I would always do it during blocking, which, as you know, which means like, you know, they would block the scene for the camera so the cameras knew what we were going to do. So whatever I was going to do, I always did. I didn't surprise them. So they would be going, okay, you know, that's it. And so if they didn't say anything and it was okay, then I would just keep going.
And nobody ever objected.
They didn't, except one day I was dusting and I sneezed, and then they didn't say anything. So when we went to tape, I did the same thing. And they said, cut. And I go, what? Why? You guys didn't say anything. They said, because we thought you really sneezed. So don't sneeze. I said, okay.
And did they keep the sneeze?
No, they didn't want me to sneeze.
They didn't want you to sneeze.
No.
So my assumption is that as you were adding these little bits and pieces of Esther that you thought were helpful, at least certainly to you, the writers must have picked up on that and then started to add things as well.
Right. They started to add, well, like in the beginning, I didn't even have a name. And Jeannie Cooper, who played my boss, Mrs. Chancellor, all these years, who was incredible actress and amazing friend. One day she just, you know, we were rehearsing our scenes like they were written, but then when we went to tape, she started calling me Esther. And fortunately I responded, didn't go, what? And then she would tell other actors that were in the scene, other characters, yeah, call her Esther. Oh, so they started calling me Esther, and then the writers started writing it, and then that.
Well, how bizarre would it have been had she called you Esther, but then it turned out that your name was something else?
Yeah, well, that would, yes, that, but it was. Well, I didn't have a name, so you could have called me anything, and it was kind of interesting because Esther was my grandmother's name, so it was wild.
Yeah, so that was pure serendipity. That was not intentional.
Absolutely.
How fun. So let's talk about process a little bit. When you receive your script, whatever script you're getting for the day, how far in advance is it? Just the day before?
We get our scripts about a week ahead of time.
A week ahead of time.
They give you cuts and changes the night before. So I can't really wait to learn it the night before, unless it's not a whole lot, then I can wait. but I'll have to start learning it. If I have a lot, then I have to start learning it before.
And do you find that once you've learned it, it's relatively easy to make those changes?
Yeah, pretty much. It is relatively easy. Well, because I'll usually cut something out and go, wow, I just spent all that time learning it. But that's okay.
Do you ever find that frustrating, or do you just shine it on?
No, it's all part of the process.
Part of the process. And aside from reading the script for the first time, which is obviously what you need to do, what is the first thing that you work on? What do you look to do? Is it you just start to memorize, or do you start to think about how you're going to play the scene?
I like to read the entire script. A lot of people just read their own scenes, but I don't. I like to read the script. I watch all the shows, and a lot of people don't do that. I really want to know what's going on in the show, even though I might not be in those scenes or not have anything to do with the character, because when I'm out doing, appearances and, viewers will ask me something, and if I don't watch the show, I'm not going to know the answer, and I like to do that.
So that's the opposite of when famously William Shatner would tell people to get a life. That's not you. You have information available because you actually are a fan of the show at the same time.
You're absolutely right. I just saw him last night. I was at this Legends of Aviation event, and yes, that it's definitely not like him.
I've had the good fortune to interview him live on stage.
Oh,
So,
wow.
a very interesting man in person. That I can tell you for sure.
I agree. Yeah.
So, all right. So have the writers ever thrown you a curveball and you didn't know how to handle it?
There was one that I was really worried about, was when they decided, when my character gave birth in the middle of a storm on the stairs of the mansion. And and since I've never done that in real life, that was, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be something.
Well, how many people have given birth on the stairs in a mansion?
Yeah, I don't know. Too many.
So how did you solve it? What did you do? What was your process to get there?
I actually, because I'm still in class, and I in acting class, sort of I went to my coach and said, okay, what do I do about this? And we worked it out in class.
You've just said something that truly fascinates me. You've been a performer for many years, and you're still taking classes.
I am.
What is your purpose in that? What are you looking for?
Because it's a craft. It's a business. I played the same role for a lot of years, and so that's why I like to do different things. I will take roles in like independent films and or smaller things, because I think it's really good to to play someone else, because I know how Esther would think, but I don't know how maybe this other character would think. Steve, I don't take it for granted. I mean, I could go upstairs one day and never come down. Is how I feel. So I just keep it fresh and keep going to class and go to my voice lessons and my dance lessons and, acting class.
I think that that's such a valuable lesson for the listeners out there who may think to themselves, once they've learned it and crossed the bridge into some form of professional work, that they don't need to worry about continuing to learn. And I think what you're saying is a really great exemplar for anybody who's coming up in the business, that you always need to keep fresh and learn.
Definitely. I definitely believe that. I know it's true. I've watched, a lot of people come and go, and I don't want one of those people to be going. So, I mean, I definitely believe that.
So soap operas notoriously, and in Young and the Restless in particular, explore characters deeply and plot lines deeply over long periods of time. For you, and you don't have to be specific in any particular story, although you're welcome to be, what for you makes a good storyline good for you? What is more intriguing than something else? Is it something that is explosive and full of conflict, or is it something more personal and interior? What for you makes a good storyline work?
For me, I just want to be part of it. Our show, we have incredible writers. When you think about what they do, here we are coming up on the 50th anniversary of our show. That's half a century. These writers write, every day. I mean, they have 5 shows a week, and to keep it going and different and fresh. and I'm in complete awe of them. So whatever they come up with is, for me to play, I can't wait, and I look forward to doing it. So, of course, some are, some are more than others. There's, when I think back of all the things in the 50 years, I've been kidnapped twice, like giving birth on the stairs, having, my daughter, and then there's grandchildren, and all the things, how Esther has grown and keeps going through all these years.
Young and the Restless storylines tend, unlike some other soap operas, to be a little closer to reality. They're more realistic. They're not as fantastical, but they still have to be filled with conflict, because that's the basis of great storytelling, I think, is that conflict is there. And so that's what makes the drama sell. Do you ever have difficulty buying into a conflict-filled storyline that you're involved in, or is it just fun for you?
No, I don't, because I don't have trouble buying into it. And if I did, I would say to them, well, I don't know if Esther would, think like that. I mean, I will say this, I can always tell when someone who's writing, who doesn't normally write the dialogue part for my character, is writing. I'll look and say, oh, this person doesn't usually, because it was say certain words that Esther wouldn't say it that way.
Do you tell them?
I will. Then I will go to them and say, can I say, this word instead of that? Because I don't believe that Esther would talk like that, or she wouldn't say that word. She would use this particular word instead.
Well, no one would know better than you at this point.
Right. After, I know how she thinks and how she feels and what word she would use. So that's the only thing where I would say. Other than that, it's my job. Like I said, they're amazing what they do. It's my job to bring their words to life. It is not my job to rewrite the script and rewrite my role. So I won't ever do that.
But I'm correct to assume that you feel deeply personal about Esther Valentine, and that you're protecting her, and to make sure that character remains true to who she is.
Definitely. You're definitely right about that. I feel very protective of her and the viewers, because I know they're going to go, what? Esther wouldn't do that. Esther wouldn't say that, so I am very protective. It's just like the characters too, like Mrs. Chancellor, and then the character of Jill, who's played by Jess Walton, who's amazing. I know that Jess feels that way too, because there'll be things like a scene between she and I, and that character, Jill, is always nasty to Esther. And if she's too nice, if in the script, if she's too nice, she'll say, no, she would never be that nice to Esther. No, there's no way. She has to say something else.
Are any of the writers still from back when you started? Are any of them still on the show, or is it all different writers now?
No, actually, some of the writers, I'm trying to think, well, from when I started.
Because 40 years on the show is a long time to be a writer.
No, yeah. But there have been people that I've been associated with on the show, for years and years, and over 20 years and so forth.
And they're not likely to be the ones writing the dialogue that doesn't fit. They'll know.
Exactly. But there are different writers. That's true.
So sets, any kind of set, whether it's a motion picture set, a TV set, even a stage set, are notoriously distracting places. There's a lot going on. There's hubbub and there's stuff that's happening. Do you have any techniques for eliminating distractions so that you're in the right mind frame as you're doing a scene?
Well, if that's going on, that the stage manager they'll cut that out, because you can't have people talking and everything when.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, Kate, is that prior to a scene rolling, there's a certain amount of activity going on. And I assume you're trying to get into the right headspace in order to do the scene. Are you able to do that without the distractions bothering you?
Well, I just have to go off to the side and, tell myself, I just concentrate and really concentrate on what is happening. In fact, there was this one scene where I thought my daughter had died, and the show, I thought she was gone. And then there was this scene where she wasn't dead. And of course I didn't know that. And then she comes into the room and I see her for the first time that she's alive. And I had to really, really believe that. I had to really believe that she was gone. It had to be happening for the first time for me. So I went off to the side and just tried to, I didn't want to look at her, or I didn't want to see her at all. And then, because I turn around and there she is. And that was wonderful. It turned out to be really great.
So is that typical of the way that you prepare? Do you prepare by yourself and get into that mind
Yeah,
space?
a lot of times we'll be running lines. In that particular instance, we didn't. But yeah, usually I like running lines. A lot of people don't. I love running with the other person, and so that when you get on set, and it has to be just part of you. And well, I can only speak for myself, but part of me. And so that I don't want to think about what the next word is. You don't want to think about what you're going to say next, because then you're in your head. It's not, not coming from a place of.
You're no longer in the moment at that point.
In the moment. Absolutely. You're not. So I want to be in the moment.
That is everyone I've ever talked to ever in the business of acting. It's about being in the moment.
You're absolutely right. That is it.
I want to ask you about fame and celebrity. You have a certain amount of fame and celebrity. You've got a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and you're known for being very gracious to the fans. Do you have any tricks for handling all of that attention when it comes your way?
I'm just so honored to be part of it and to be there. And so I give back as much as I can. I'm out just about every night on a carpet and giving back and doing like a celebrity spokesperson for ALS Association, Golden West chapter for ALS, and do things for the LA mission, serving Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter and all that, and doing teas. I bring up Young and the Restless cast members to Canada. In fact, we've got one coming up in June in Toronto.
Tell us about the teas. What do you do? What happens during the teas?
Well, for the last few years, because of the pandemic, we have had to be virtual, and we're hoping to be back in person now. And I bring up, several castmates, and we have meet and greets, and there's questions from the audience, and we have auction items. It's for their conductive ed program for March of Dimes Canada.
Right.
I've been doing the teas actually for over 22 years. Started in Vancouver, Victoria, and Vancouver. Then we also did Toronto and Calgary, and it's just great because we're able to have a lot of fun and raise money to help people. I've raised so much money through the years, and it makes me feel really good that I'm able, because of this, and you talk about the celebrity, because of that, I'm able to give back and to help. Mm-hmm. It's fine for me. I mean, and I look around, if it wasn't for all these people and people coming up to me, no matter what, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't be on set. I wouldn't be able to do all the things I love doing. So they're a huge part of it. And I'm honored that they watch, that they love it, that they love Esther, or that they want to talk to me or her or whoever I happen to be that day. It makes me very, very happy.
Well, you are obviously very gracious and generous with your time. And you have done a lot of charity work and a lot of put a lot of energy out into that. Is there any issue for you in terms of how you balance your professional life and doing all of those events?
No, I mean, I'm happiest when I'm working. So, a lot of people would say I'm not balanced. I don't know. That makes me happy giving back. Maybe I'm not as balanced as a lot of people. I don't know. I don't know. But for me, it's totally fine.
You apparently have endless energy to do it, or you wouldn't do it.
Right. And this makes me happy. I mean, when we think about things, and things that have happened because I've been in the position to help someone. I mean, I got a letter well, see, this tells you how long ago it was. I received a letter, and and this woman said, could I send a picture to her sister who it was her birthday and she was ill, and by the time I got the letter, I thought, well, I'm never going to get this in time. So I I called information. This is years and years ago, right?
Wow.
Looking for this woman, you know, and I was able to get her number and called her and said, this is Esther on Young and the Restless, because I thought she's never going to know who Kate Linder is. And I said, I know it's your birthday. I just want to say happy birthday. And she went, well, you know, I'm really sick. And I said, I know. We talked a long time. And then unfortunately, she eventually passed away. But before that, her sister, you know, contacted me and said, oh my God, you know, after she talked to you, you know, she got a lot better. And, you know, the doctors were amazed. And I was actually in contact with that family for years and years, and watched how the kids grew up and went to school. And it just made me so happy. I could make this person feel good for a few minutes or whatever it was, and to help her. If I have the opportunity, or I'm in the position to do that and not do it, I mean, I can't imagine. So I was thrilled that worked out.
Well, I think that makes you exceptional.
Well, thanks. I don't know. It's just, I feel like, you see, like going back to in the very beginning when we were talking today, when how I started, and, you know, when I was a little girl, and like I said, I had no one in this business. I mean, I knew no one. And to be able to be in a position to help and to give back, how can I not do that? That's what it is for me.
Well, I'll say it again. I think you're exceptional, because I think there are a lot of people in the industry who are known, who don't. And so I think that makes you exceptional.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, I'm curious, one of the most fascinating things to me about your life is the fact that you stayed all those years as a United Airlines flight attendant. Even though you were on TV and well known. So how did that work when you get on a plane working as an attendant? And people would recognize you, I assume.
Oh, I've had great, amazing stories. It's like doing a personal appearance on the airplane, you know. And
did they think it's a stunt?
Well, no, you know, different stories. Like this couple got on, and I usually fly purser. She's, you know, in charge. So I'm usually at the front door, and people and I like to see who's getting on the airplane, who's getting on. So anyway, this couple got on, and the woman said, you know, Esther, and the husband pulled me aside and he said, I'll pay you $50 if you say it's not you. I went, what? He said, well, she, you know, saw you as we were getting on. She said, oh my God, that's Esther on Young and the Restless. And I told her, no way. I mean, what is Esther doing here as a flight? There's no way. And she said, it is. He said, I'll pay. He said, I bet her $100. I said, great. You're only paying me $50. So I'm telling. Yeah. Just great stories. You know, a lot of times people won't say anything till they're getting off, and they'll go, you know, I watch you on the show. I said, oh my gosh, why didn't you say anything? But I've just had, you know, people's comments, and I love it. I've had, because the show is all over the world. I've had I had this group from Turkey on the airplane, and this gentleman said to me, he said, you're my mother. And I said, okay, I can't remember a lot of things, but I think I would know that. I don't think so. He said, no. My mother does your voice in Turkey. And I said, wow. That was really great. So I've had, you know, interesting stories.
So you say it keeps you grounded, even though you're in the air. So I love that line. It keeps you grounded while you're in the air. But how does it keep you grounded? Because you're dealing with the public?
Well, no, it keeps me grounded because, like I said, one day I am playing Esther. I'm on set. The next day, I'm talking to you. The day after that, I'm serving coffee at 35,000 feet. And you cannot forget who you are that way.
Mm.
Like I said, I've seen a lot of people come and go. I've seen a lot of people believe their own press. So it's really hard to do that when you are on the airplane like that.
Well, you're working. You're really a working person, and I think a lot of people forget that people who are in the business of acting, actors, actresses, they forget that they are actually working. It sometimes looks so effortless and fun, but it is a job, and you actually go to work. But you work at three major kinds of things. You work at your job at The Young and the Restless, you work at United Airlines, and you work at the various charities that you do. So that's a lot of working.
But I like that. I like working.
To you, it's not work.
Right. It's not. Like I said, I'm excited to go to work. So it's not work. The bad connotation of work. Oh no, I have to go to work today. That's not how it is for me.
Well, I have been speaking to the just divine Kate Linder for almost an hour now on StoryBeat. And I'm just curious, you've told us some fantastic stories, including this one about being working on United Airlines. I'm wondering if you're able to share with us any particular story that's weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny beyond what you've already told us.
Well, okay, this is kind of a weird story. And this happened on the airplane. There was some crazy thing where they found out we hadn't taken off yet, but they had found out that these people were transporting drugs or something on the plane.
Wow.
This goes back. And so anyway, they were going to take them off. We went back to the gate. They were taking them off the airplane. And as they're taking them off, and I'm standing, we're all going, what is going on? Because we weren't really sure. And as they were going off the airplane, this woman turned to me and she said, "Aren't you Esther on Young and the Restless?" And that got me. That was the first time I didn't even respond. I was like, yeah. I mean, I was so strange.
Was she in cuffs?
No, they didn't do that part. They were, I guess they somehow were walking them off the airplane. She wasn't in cuffs, but there were authorities taking them off the airplane.
That's almost a scene out of a movie.
I know. It was very, very, very strange. It was a while ago, that's for sure.
And I imagine that you've had all kinds of crazy things happen in your years on the air.
Yes. Oh, on the air?
Well, I mean, I should say in the air.
On the air. Yeah.
Well, you've been both on the air and in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure your experiences, especially being exposed like that to the public all the time, I'm sure that it's got to be lots of fun for you. So last question for you today, Kate. You've already given us a ton of great advice as well. And I'm just wondering, do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip that you like to give to people who are coming up in the business, or maybe they're in a little bit and trying to get to that next level?
Well, Steve, I call it, for me, I call it working the program. I think you just have to work really hard, still study, which I do. It's called show business for a reason. It's a business. It's a business of show, and you have to treat it as such. And I think you can't look to, well, for instance, receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame was just, I still can't believe it. I mean, I have to go there periodically and make sure it's still there, because that's such a huge honor for me. But when I started in this business, I didn't say, okay, I'm going to get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Didn't look at it that way. Just looked at it as doing the best work I can and keep studying so that it can keep getting better and keep going. And that's why I call it working the program, and not push too hard for those outside things. And because when you don't, I think they come to you.
You call the program, I love that word, the program being the professional world.
Right. Working the program for me is the profession. And
how helpful was it for you to have been a little girl coming up through the ranks to understand what the program is? Do you think you understood it better because you had so much experience before you got to the quote unquote professional part of it?
Well, I think, of course, I understand it a lot more now, and then I don't understand it, as well, because, you go, well, wait a minute, how come, I want to move into this level, or let's say, okay, for instance, I would love to do Broadway. I've always wanted to do Broadway.
Okay.
I'm not giving up on that. And I just keep working really hard. And, hopefully someday that happens or not.
Well, all you Broadway producers out there, listen to this.
Yeah, I would love that. And
do you want to do a musical or do you want to do straight play?
Definitely a musical.
Musical.
But I wouldn't turn down,
a straight play or a comedy. Yeah.
Oh, definitely comedy. I love, as you know, I love comedy. The Esther is basically started out as a comic relief because of the fact that I didn't have any lines, hardly any. So she became the comic relief because there's no other way to do it.
Well, you made that happen.
Yeah.
That's very instructional for people who are listening to this show, that you made that happen, that transition from sort of an ordinary, plain, probably not too interesting character into someone of interest.
Well, back then too, there wasn't comedy. There was not comedy on soaps. And my boss, Bill Bell, who was the creator and owner and the head writer and an incredibly talented, amazing man, he didn't really like comedy, but he came to me one day and he said, I know what you're doing and it's okay, but don't you go too far. He said, do not, so I went, whoa, okay. He said, not too much. So
wouldn't he have pulled you back if you'd gone too far?
Well, he wouldn't have been on set to pull me back right then, and maybe, might have been by the time it was taped and, might have been not able to do that. He just, I knew, and Jeannie, who played Mrs. Chancellor, we would always run our lines and she said, okay, don't do too much. She knew too. She said, don't do too much. Because you can't make her unbelievable. I mean, she had to be believable, but Esther is kind of quirky,
It's not, you can't be wacky on that show.
No.
It can be funny, but not wacky.
Right. And I like the fact that people, when a lot of things that people will say to me is, or when they meet me, said, you make me smile. And that is great. If I can make someone smile in this day and age too, how fabulous.
Incredibly fabulous. In talking to you for this hour, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, you would be fantastic in something that really was a little bit offbeat and oddball in terms of comedy, really out there comedy. I think you'd be great at that.
That'd be great. See, Steve, you need to write that. That would be good.
I'm going to have to give that some thought. Kate Linder, this has been just so much fun for me and such a terrific hour on StoryBeat, and I cannot thank you enough for spending your time with me. It's very gracious of you.
Well, I so enjoyed it. I enjoyed speaking with you. I think you're terrific. So thank you for having me.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.